Sir, step out of the car. Now, let's go.
Officer, I'm disabled. I just need a second, please.
Out of the vehicle, right now. Do not argue with me.
I can't get out quick, please.
I said step out. Refusing a lawful order, you're gonna go to jail.
I'm not refusing,
Doors coming open, exit the car.
I'm telling you, I can't, please.
Give me your arm, out.
A silver sedan sits on the shoulder of a wide highway, hazards flashing, the driver with both hands visible on the wheel, and his body leaning as if trying to relieve an old pain. Outside, a police officer walks with a stiff gait along the side lane, flashlight tapping the glass, already decided on what he is seeing. Traffic rushes by and the moment freezes. A man trying to be careful, and an authority figure treating caution like an affront. What he didn't know was that the man behind that wheel wasn't a suspect, wasn't disobedient, and wasn't someone who would go away quietly. He was a driver with a disability, with real, documented limitations. And he had spent years learning to survive in a world where a stranger's haste becomes a sentence. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If it's your first time here, hit the subscribe button. Stories like this need to be heard, and your subscription helps us bring more truth to light. The official reason for the stop seemed ridiculous, even to those who have seen it all. Driving too slowly. The word too is always the dangerous part because it becomes a license to invent the rest. The officer doesn't arrive asking if there is a mechanical problem, if the driver is feeling unwell, or if he needs help. He arrives with that unwritten manual posture, authority first, humanity later, if there's time left over. And so begins the ritual that the camera loves to record in high definition. Dry request, impatient tone, the old attempt to transform a simple explanation into attitude. The driver tries to communicate calmly, like someone who already knows that any tremor in his voice becomes a pretext. He explains his limitations, his pace, his reaction time. But the officer doesn't want context. He wants quick submission, a performance of obedience. How often does a stop start with, "Are you okay?" instead of license and registration? The body cam reveals a detail that gives everything away. The moment the officer stops listening. It's not when he speaks louder. It's when his body stiffens, when his hand goes to his waist, when the argument becomes an order, and the order becomes a threat. The camera records what the report usually tries to hide, the escalation happening before any risk. And the window becomes a symbol, because breaking glass isn't technique, it's a message. It is the state saying, your body, your limitation, your time do not matter. That is why, when the window bursts, it isn't just glass that falls. The narrative of standard procedure falls with it. And, ironically, it all falls right into the lap of the camera itself, which keeps recording, indifferent to the uniform's ego. If the reason was driving too slowly, at exactly what minute does that become justification for force? The rest is predictable, and that is precisely why it is so damnable. Handcuffs as punctuation, threats as commas, and that phrase repeated in infinite variations. Stop resisting, said to someone who is trying to breathe, explain, keep up. In cases like this, disability becomes the new non-compliance. Reaction time becomes suspicious. Pain becomes drama. And then comes the second act, the report. Cold, clean, convenient text. Words like aggressive, did not comply, feared for my safety. Only there is a problem. The body cam was there. The timestamp is relentless. And every recorded second becomes a small judgment against the person who thought they could rewrite reality. When the city's defense realizes the video doesn't help, the question stops being, how do we win? And becomes, how much will this cost? The first attempt is always to minimize. It was a misunderstanding. He didn't inform us. The officer acted according to training. But a disability is not an optional detail, and civil rights are not suggestions. The way the driver moves, responds, and speaks is not insolence. It is a condition. And if a stop depends on ignoring that, then the procedure is wrong from birth. At what point did public safety become an excuse to punish people for having limitations? In the video, signs emerge that this was never about traffic. It's the way the officer frames the driver, not as a citizen but as a problem. It's the rush to transform conversation into command. It's the insistence on, get out of the car, as if everybody had the same standard, the same capacity, the same timing. And when the driver tries to explain, the response comes in sarcasm, interruptions, threats. The irony is that the camera, created to protect the officer from false accusations, becomes the most dangerous witness. It doesn't argue, doesn't negotiate, doesn't get tired. It just records. And it records what destroys the standard defense, the absence of a real threat prior to the use of force. At some point, they try to justify the broken window as an extraction tool, a pretty phrase for a brutal act. But extraction presupposes immediate necessity. What the video usually shows is something much uglier. The window was broken because the officer lost patience. Patience is not a legal requirement for force, but lack of patience is not a justification either. From there, the case stops being an episode and becomes a lawsuit. Lawyers step in. Records are subpoenaed. Training logs appear. And when the legal team is good, the question changes. How many other reports exist regarding the same officer? How many complaints were shelved? How many times was insubordination used to cover impulsive decisions? If there was already a history of complaints, why was that officer still on the street? When the story gains traction, the public divides into two predictable groups. One says, if he just obeyed, nothing would have happened. The other asks, obey what exactly? Because what the camera shows is not a clear and necessary legal order. It shows escalation. It shows an officer constructing a threat in real time. It shows what many people have always suspected but rarely managed to prove. The system rewards aggressive confidence and punishes vulnerability. And then comes what authorities hate. The video becomes fuel. It circulates. It gets analyzed. People with disabilities recognize the pattern. Organizations apply pressure. The city realizes it can't pretend this was isolated. Because when a window is broken for driving too slowly, the question isn't about traffic. It's about power. With the footage on the table and public opinion swelling, the city makes the initial offer and discovers it no longer controls the price. What transforms a case like this into a financial condemnation isn't just the impact of the moment. It is the chain of events, the stop, the force, the treatment afterward, and the attempt to justify it. Each layer adds a different type of damage: physical, psychological, reputational, institutional. In depositions, the officer usually tries to reconstruct fear. Suspicious movements. Hands out of sight. Refusal to comply. But the camera records hands on the wheel, a voice trying to explain, and an officer talking over him. That is where the report begins to turn into a bitter joke and evidence. If the body cam contradicts the report, who do you believe? The video or the pen? The civil lawsuit opens a door that departments hate: patterns, inadequate training, negligent supervision, internal culture. And when this appears, the city realizes the case isn't one officer. It is a system. A system costs money because it involves municipal liability. It wasn't an isolated error, it was the predictable consequence of institutional choices. In cases involving disability, the filter becomes even clearer: reasonableness. The central question isn't, could he do something? It is, would a reasonable officer in the same situation do this? And breaking glass because someone was slow is the type of attitude that sounds absurd outside the bubble of authority. The turning point is often a short clip of video, a phrase, a gesture, a second, that destroys the defensive narrative. It might be the mocking tone. It might be the threat before any real danger. It might be the officer admitting, without realizing it, that he was irritated, not threatened. This isn't a detail. This is intention leaking out. And the driver becomes a public figure without wanting to. He becomes a symbol. He becomes the broken glass case. But a legal victory doesn't erase the body. It doesn't give back the sensation of safety inside a stopped car. It doesn't give back the peace of knowing that the time of one's own body will be respected. If you had to choose between being right and having peace, what would the choice be? Meanwhile, the city makes a cold calculation. How much does it cost to go to trial with a bad video? How much does it cost to lose? How much does the headline cost? How much does the next lawsuit cost when this precedent is set? That is how the number grows, not out of generosity, but out of cornering. When the negotiation nears the final figure, the department tries to call it closure. But a settlement doesn't close a video, and a video doesn't forget. The settlement closes at $14, $1 million, an exact, painfully specific amount, like a receipt issued by the system itself to the population. This is what it costs to ignore rights and treat vulnerability as a challenge. And someone always shows up saying, It's just money. But money here is institutional language. It is the only thing cities understand quickly because it comes from the budget, from taxes, from the collective pocket. Every penny is proof that someone evaluated the recording and concluded, this will not hold up before a jury. When the city pays millions, is that justice? Or is it just the price of keeping everything the same? After the number come the promises. Policy review, additional training, conduct evaluation. The public has seen this movie. The correct question isn't what was said, it is what was done. Real reform has a deadline, an audit, and consequences. Otherwise, it is a press release with a coat of varnish. 3 minimal changes when disability enters the equation should be obvious. A clear protocol for stops involving people with disabilities, including reasonable response time and adapted communication. An objective rule against escalation due to impatience, with a rigid review of force linked to vehicle extraction. External and transparent review of incidents involving force to prevent creative reporting from trying to beat the video. And the officer? The fate may vary, but there is one constant fact. If the culture protects those who break windows out of irritation, the next glass is already on the schedule. All that's missing is the next vulnerable driver in the wrong place at the wrong time. The driver carries 2 things at once, the victory on paper and the mark of the event. Getting money doesn't mean the brain stops anticipating danger at any red light, but it means that, this time, reality wasn't erased by an official narrative. The final irony is almost cruel. The body cam only becomes justice when someone insists on looking, when a lawyer asks, when the public watches, when the city can't bury it. The camera doesn't create morality, it only exposes the lack of it. If the body cam didn't exist, what would be the official version told today? And what does your city do in practice to guarantee that the next video won't need to cost millions to be believed? If this story made you uncomfortable, it was meant to. Because what the camera recorded wasn't an incident, it was a reflection of the system working the way many people pretend doesn't exist. If you believe civil rights aren't a privilege and that no one should be beaten, humiliated, or have their car destroyed by an authority's whim, leave a like now and subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't watch body cams to make excuses or to hunt for cheap clicks. We watch to understand, to demand accountability, and to put it on the record when the state crosses the line. Write in the comments, what was the exact second you realized this had already gone out of control? And if you have lived through something similar, or know someone with a disability who lives with this fear every day, share this video with that person. Information today is self-protection. And so you don't miss the next case, hit the notification bell. Because as long as cameras are recording and people are watching, it gets harder for them to rewrite the truth.